on a tooling level. For example, we help clubs launch their own club tokens. We're working with Uniswap on a Uniswap meta delegate where students can participate in governance in these DAOs and getting more involved in that way. And one of my favorite things is working with Decentraland on getting more students involved in the metaverse and getting them into VR, building in VR, kind of combining their passions for NFTs, for creating, for art, and for 3D modeling into this virtual world. And this also goes along well with DAOs and goes along well with education, which is what Ben is all about. So it's a natural extension. At the same time, with our guests here today, so Scott and Vivek from Gitcoin. Gitcoin has also been a very great friend to Ben. We've helped them get a lot of students for hackathons. They've had a lot of bounty opportunities that our students have found very valuable. And we've even had, I think, a team or two participate in Kernel, which is their incubator, accelerator type program. So, they have a lot of interesting ideas and great ideas for the future of work, the future of fundraising, the future of open source. So the more that we can collaborate with you guys and the more we can get clubs involved, the more we can get students involved. Kind of some context for you guys on the audience. So, we invite club presidents to come to these events. We invite professors, we invite our partners, we invite all of our audience, but especially a big focus on the community leaders and the teachers and the club leaders that we have. And kind of the idea is how can they get their students more engaged beyond just speakers and events and workshops? What kinds of things can their students do and what resources are available for them to kind of work for the open source future and kind of build on it and get a chance to have their voice heard on it. So that's the context. I'll pass it over to you guys. I will be taking, if anyone has questions, you can post them in the Zoom chat or in Decentraland. There's also a chat feature you can post in the Decentraland chat, and we will relay them over to here. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, and Eric, it's great to have the introduction. I mean, Ben has been a partner for now at least two out of the 3 years that we've been working on Gitcoin. We started the project in 2017 and were mostly focused on, at the time, bounties. And at the time, what that meant was that you could have a very specific GitHub issue for maybe $50 or $200 or $250 that you might want to work with somebody in the open source community, which basically meant anywhere in the world. A lot of stuff happening in crypto is open source, so that's great. Now, 90 to 95% of anything that's being built to grow the internet is open source, and there's funding available for those projects. So we thought it was kind of like the first logical step at the time. But what I think we've been more and more excited about is once you make first contact, once one person gets to know another person through a relationship, maybe working on a project together as small as a $50 project, there's something intrinsically much more valuable about the fact that these two people now have built a level of trust with each other. And we wanted to kind of play with that and see the ways that we could use those relationships that we're forming in these open source contexts to do a variety of other things. And so Eric, prior to this, mentioned things like Gitcoin grants, where people have gone from the earliest stages of building a project to raising funding for it to then going on to find either, let's say, investment from different grant programs or venture firms that allow them to continue working on their open source projects. So it's been a fun ride. Maybe if it's appropriate, Scott, you could add to that, or if Eric, there's anything else that I think is appropriate to add on to that, we can go either way.
I think that was a great summary. I'll just say hi, Scott, also at Gitcoin, and yeah, Ben has been a great supporter of ours. So want to just genuinely say thank you for that, and I think there'll be many more collaborations to come. So Eric, I'll pass it back to you, but a lot to jam on.
Yeah, I wanted to really highlight that. I'm a big fan of the hackathons that you guys have thrown. I think that the topics have been really interesting. You know, hackathons focused on privacy. There's been hackathons focused on particular, you know, industries and sectors of NFTs and getting involved with like stable coins. So there's been a lot of variety. And I think that the projects that have come through it have been pretty interesting, and kind of creating the community around that so that, you know, there's always something happening and there's always something that students could be involved on. I imagine that on your side, it's a lot of fatigue to always kind of be like, there's always some hackathon that's like happening within like the next week or so. But I think definitely for the audiences, they really have appreciated just there's always an opportunity to be doing something and to kind of keep growing and to keep it going. And then I imagine, and you guys can, hopefully you can shed some light on like how you think about these different programs interacting with each other. But I imagine that like the idea for kernel came from wanting the students that, or the attendees of the hackathon to kind of take the next step now that they've made a project, and now what?
Exactly. Yeah, you're spot on. We started, as mentioned, with bounties. It was super simple. Anyone in the world work on this particular task, which was cool, very free form, flowing, still an option on the platform. But not too long after that, we started to bundle the energy around topics into these hackathons. And we took kind of like a longer form approach and a more targeted approach. What you'll notice in Web3 hackathons, if you haven't attended any yet, is that a lot of people come with really specific ideas for things that they think could be built on their protocol. It's not like a traditional hackathon where it's kind of like, hey, there's an API right here and maybe you can like play around with it and do something. Everything is open source. Everything is like able to be a building block for an application that can come on top of it. And so right now, for example, during the grants round, there's a hackathon with, Scott can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like 20 sponsors. And I can imagine projects that use 2 or 3 of these different technologies as building blocks as they build their hackathon projects in a way that's not like a Frankenstein project. So that was cool. And for about a year, we ran upwards of 20 to 25 hackathons with a lot of the top crypto companies in the space. And the sentiment from everyone was, these are awesome. Let's find ways to continue supporting the projects. Let's find ways to get projects from 0 to 1 to 100. And that's where Kernel came out of last May. And I guess I could share my screen if it's helpful, or if not, just recommend kernel.community as a website to check out. I'll put it in the Zoom chat. And if somebody wants to add it to Decentraland, that could be cool.
Yeah, you can share your screen, and then it'll show up on the screen, and Decentraland will also see your screen as well. And we will go and post this link there as well.
Cool. Right now it has attendee screen sharing disabled, but I'm happy to.
Antonio should be able to fix that.
While Antonio is getting to it, just the TLDR on Kernel was that we had well over 25 hackathons with 2,500 people that had attended these, and what we wanted to do is bring together a top group of 200. So builders who are really kind of showing that they've done something really interesting in the space, or want to. Maybe they're coming from Web 2 and have a strong background. Leaders at colleges like yourself could be good candidates to apply. And the idea was that, okay, there's 50 awesome projects here. There's 250 great people. What fun stuff could we do together for 8 weeks? First and foremost, to get to know each other better and to explore Web3 together through kind of like an 8-week meandering syllabus. But also, here are 50 project ideas that span basically all over the hackathons that we've been running and Web3 in general, and see what types of cool stuff can come out of the 8 weeks. And we just got through the second block, which had 200 people, and 22 projects presented at the end, even though there was, like mentioned, like 50 to 75 if you count research projects by PhD students, different early stage DeFi projects that are more at the conception phase. but as mentioned here, some NFT projects, some DAO projects, social token projects, and it's just a really great group of people that we're really excited about. So that's kind of one other piece, and then maybe I could pass to Scott to talk about what we're best known for, which is Gitcoin grants, which is also in this vein.
Yeah, although actually the screen share is really helpful. So if you keep that up, that'd be great. But Gitcoin grants really was like the first experiment we ran around how do we get people to actually continue building their projects. And there were two categories of projects that we really cared about. One of them was like sort of more like infrastructure and of course like dApps as well. But like infrastructure to me is the one that's key because a lot of that stuff really goes like under the radar. And actually, funny enough, another thing we were just talking about before we went live is the idea of like Ethereum as kind of a city. And I think it's really neat because there is this sort of like shared ethos that we have to make sure infrastructure is maintained and ultimately we all benefit from that in the end. In Web 2, only a city or only a country might benefit from the electrical grids of roads and bridges in a given area, but like now it really the entire world theoretically could benefit from some of the technologies that we're making on Ethereum today. So I think that yeah, we've so far like really tried to make that a focus of these rounds. In total, I think we now have over 1,000 grantees, which is wild. We've raised, actually even in the last round alone, we raised $1 million for the projects in total. And all of them basically are projects that have, opted into being part of the community at one point or another, like Lighthouse is on the screen now. Like they're a really popular sort of like project because they're one of the first ETH2 clients that was ever made. And they're really critical for the next step of the project. Then I haven't actually explained this. I think actually it might be useful for those that don't know. But the mechanism we use is actually this thing called quadratic funding. And I think a lot of you in the audience might already have a sense of, that term. But in short, what it means is you can democratically donate to projects. And by doing so, you can actually help allocate a matching pool that we've put together. So Vitalik has a lot of really good posts on this topic. If you just go to his blog, he's written about this a few times. And I think he says it much more articulately than I can. But the idea is basically that, you really want to make sure it's not just a dollar amount that's, determining how successful a grantee is. It's how many people care about that project as well. And that's something that this sort of quadratic funding really does a good job of. I can give you, one example here, which is Sherlock. And like they've raised a pretty small matching amount and a really pretty large dollar amount. And that's because in this particular round, 105 contributors is actually not a lot. We have a lot of projects that have raised from at this point, probably there's some that even have 1,000 contributors to them. And ultimately that is a big factor in how much matching they get in the end. So there's sort of this dual model. It's not just the money, it's also the, people that are voting with that money and what they're saying about the products they care about. So that's like a brief intro. I don't need to probably go for too long on it, but yeah, Vivek, did you want to add anything on that?
I think it's really good. And if you're interested in quadratic funding, Scott mentioned it. There's a section on Vitalik's blog that's kind of about the growth of the rounds. It's been kind of incredible to us. And like for somebody who's new to crypto, I genuinely think it's a good place to just kind of like poke around. I have my own grants that I'm trying to fund here, and there's just a bunch of awesome projects. If you like look kind of closely, this green NFT project is one I came across. POAP was one that Eric mentioned earlier that we're trying to use for Ben stuff, which is cool. Mint Fund, another cool one. Mint Gate, another cool one that's token gated access to websites. Llama, Days Femme magazine is being run by Cami Russo. I just added Sherlock to the cart while screen sharing. And in general, like if you're looking into crypto and you're considering ideas and things to work on, and you just poke around here a little bit, we think it's a really cool place at this point, vibrant place to get a sense of what are the cool projects that people are building and why. Why are they building them? Why are they excited about them? And maybe more importantly, why are other people excited enough to donate and to show their support. And so what's really interesting about Quadratic Funding is these donations resemble votes in a very literal sense. There's an element of, me putting just 5 DAI to Mintgate or to Sherlock could bring them another $55 in matching funds, and more importantly, ties me economically on chain to Sherlock. And we think that that's just kind of the first step to a lot of the interesting things that could come from there. You could imagine Sherlock with their 125 contributors having a small group of people that they could consider their early adopters, right? Not people who have necessarily used their application because they're not even live yet, but people who have taken the time to contribute to their Gitcoin grant and now are kind of like an early part of their community. So Eric, at the beginning, before we kicked off, talked about some layer 2 activities that are happening as it relates to DAOs and NFTs. And what I like to think about each Gitcoin grant as is a space that already resembles kind of a DAO. And now we can ask some second-order questions of like what that means.
Could you guys do a walkthrough of what it looks like to donate to a grant, and especially to the collections? Because I think that the gas problems are a big issue right now. I tried donating. I wanted to donate $25 to a grant, and it costs $25 in gas fees. I'm like, how can I get that 25, the extra 25, to also go to a grant?
I could just share my screen. I'm not going to go through the full checkout flow right now, but just to show you, these are some of the ones that I have in my cart. And what's good to know for Eric, if you are still perusing, is that you don't have to make one on-chain transaction for each grant that you donate to. You can make one on-chain transaction to donate to any number of grants. So in my cart right now, there's probably 15. If I go to this checkout flow, I'll have a couple of options. Gas prices are crazy, so we've given 2 options. One, just to go through the standard checkout flow, which again, even though it's on chain, has the ability to fund all of these grants at once. And you can kind of see what I was mentioning earlier here, right? Like the 5 DAI that I allocate to green NFT, there'll be another 20 DAI that goes to the project from the matching pool, and so on and so forth, depending on the strength of that grant. And so you have 2 options here at the end. You could use the standard checkout, which if I click will open up my MetaMask and then ask me to confirm a transaction for the total amount of DAI that I have here. Or I could check out with ZK Sync. And if I check out with ZK Sync, it'll ask me for 1 transaction to send my funds to layer 2. And then as many things as I want to do there, I can do in terms of funding before I have to come back on chain to kind of close things out. So those are the 2 options, one of which is 49% cheaper, although it takes 1 more transaction. So that's one thing to consider. And then Eric mentioned collections, which is definitely useful given, as Scott mentioned, there are now thousands of Gitcoin grants, which is incredible to us. And we hold it in really high esteem and importance, I should say, to treat each grant with some kind of like love and make sure that they get shared appropriately. And so the collections feature really helps us with this. If I wanted to, I could save this whole thing as my collection, which would then allow people to find the things that I donate to, and then I could share this link directly with anyone in the ecosystem to say, hey, these are the things that I supported, or put it in a tweet, or however I wanted to do it. There are quite a few collections that could be explored. So right below the categories, you can kind of just see, okay, this is Chloe's grants. Scott had some from the privacy side. I think somebody else, Ethereum DeFi, Self-Sovereign Life, if you're interested in that. Adrian's round 9 contributions, Annette's contributions. And so yeah, it's been really cool to see different people just put their contributions together. Penbala League, which we kind of alluded to earlier. This is the 38 grants that are in the Penbala League, which is kind of cool. And you can use that, let's say Lakshman's picks, which, you know, Lakshman is a infrastructure developer doing great stuff in Ethereum. Looks like he's supported ETH Staker, which is another cool one that maybe I should add to my card, actually. And there's Finematics, which I've never heard of, but seems cool. ETH Magicians, Beacon Chain, and a bunch of ETH2 projects. So long story short, if I don't want to go through the process of checking out all 1,000 grants myself, I might check out some of these collections to make my decisions.
Eric, you still with? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, sorry, I switched to my avatar in Decentraland for like a few seconds to take some good screenshots. Okay, so I think, you know, I like to have it be very audience driven, so we can open it up for questions. So if you're in the Zoom, I think everyone here is trust you not to Zoom bomb us. You can unmute yourself and ask a question. We can enable that, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. And if anyone in Decentraland has a question, you can drop it in the chat there and we'll relay it here.
You just got to watch out for Elon 420. I don't know about that one.
Yeah, it's already a spicy username. Should have been Techno King, Elon 420.
I loved the fact that Austin, I don't know if you saw it, for those that don't know, Austin Griffith is like this sort of like Ethereum Foundation engineer, DevRel sort of person, very like talented in the space. He put out, he has this project called Nifty Inc., which is like kind of just a way to make MS Paint style drawings and turn them into NFTs. He like just took Elon's like NFT that he never turned into an NFT, just memed that out, you know, using Nifty Inc. Thought that was pretty great.
Has that sold?
I actually think there's a bid on it. I don't know what the bid is though, but I mean, there's like it is like performance art of a kind. It was like when I thought that Justin Sun had won the bid for people's art, which fortunately he didn't. Know what people's opinions are on that here. I won't dive into Tron too much, but he you know, a lot of people were saying just like this is actually adding to the value. I was actually one of the people like decided to say it, but like performance art adding to the NFT's value. So in the same way, Austin is adding to the NFT's value in Elon's case through performance art.
Yeah, we were thinking we wanted to launch NFTs for donors or, you know, people, and then using Collabland, we could have chats in the Discord channel about that. And there's actually, I think, some interesting things that we can do there. For example, like having sponsors, like, hey, if you want to post job opportunities in the jobs channel, you can make sure that you need like this job power up NFT to like you know, call the recruiter or something to like be able to make those posts. So it's more than just like some like, you know, a badge or like permission access. Although just giving out badges and giving out ranks has proven very successful as a nonprofit fundraising strategy in general. So I wanted to ask, you know, how have you guys thought about incorporating more NFTs into, you know, the strategies for fundraising and helping projects fundraise?
Really good question, actually. I mean, we do have like these kudos on the platform, which are really these sort of like, you know, tokens that you get for completing a bounty or for being part of a hackathon. I think you even get some for contributing to grants. We haven't really thought about like, how do you actually fundraise with them, but it seems like a very logical extension. I know that actually for the matching pool, so I said before, right, there's like the individual contributions, there's the matching pool. The matching pool is actually partly funded by an NFT done by a pretty OG, like Ethereum artist. And I think it was David Hoffman actually who ended up buying it. That was like super useful for us in terms of just trying to get more funding to these infrastructure projects. In terms of like, yeah, finding ways to like almost like bundle NFTs or like, I know there's a lot of discussions happening in the space around this. Like, NiftyX or like all these projects that are starting to like bundle NFTs or like starting to find new ways to like trade NFTs amongst different artists. Like I think there's a lot of things we could explore there. I will note that we have like so much backlog with grants on its own already that I'm not sure that we will get to those like in the immediate future. But I think there's a lot of promise in using NFTs as a sort of mechanism for both showcasing value and for fundraising.
Yeah. One of the ones that I think I'm excited about, I haven't even talked to Scott about yet, would be we have a bunch of early kudos that some of which were like really rare. I remember when Vitalik Genesis was one of the better ones, and there's probably like